Well, Yasmin Halima is Executive Director of the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants. She's disappointed with the new government's tough approach to illegal migration.
We all had a lot of hope that when we had a new government that we'd see some positive change. What looks like a new policy that's just been announced is actually more of the same. So if you look at the language, they talk about the surge in enforcement, the border control, the move to more detention spaces. This really just sounds very much like the same. And we just need to make sure that actually what we do is fix the system as opposed to just sounding tough, but really not fixing anything at all.
I mean, you mentioned language there, Yasmin. I mean, does the government, in your view, need to reframe the way this issue is talked about and start using different language and start using perhaps coming at it from a different approach?
Yes, absolutely. So if you look at the placards, you know, just we're days away from the violence on our streets. A lot of those placards that said, stop the boats, send them back. There's a direct line between that and the language that the government was using at the time in its campaigns. We have a new government, and yet we're hearing the same kind of language. And all that does, it just stokes up anger, stokes up all that divisive rhetoric, and it plays into the hands of the far right, when really we should be looking at the issues. We really should be trying to resolve this. And we know what to do, Andrew, to fix some of this.
But what is it that makes this so dangerous for politicians? Why is this such a difficult nettle to grasp? What's the downside? What is it that this new administration in Downing Street is worried about that prevents it from speaking plainly about the issue of immigration and looking again at the figures and what they imply?
Sure. So there are two things. One is what the government did do right is when all that violence outpouring happened on our streets, they came out directly, spoke to the communities. I mean, look, it wasn't lost on me. It wouldn't have been lost on Muslim communities and minority communities that the Prime Minister spoke directly and said, this kind of behavior is not acceptable, and the communities would be protected. That was so important. So what we were hoping was for something a little different. Instead, what we found is that there's still more investment in border control than there is in rebuilding those communities. Who has to pay for those businesses that were destroyed, the mosques, the libraries, the citizens' advice bureaus? Before the cement in rebuilding that has even dried, we now have this kind of language. So we really should be very careful in terms of what they can do. This government has shown us that they can be tough when it comes to law and order. They now need to show us that they can listen and learn.